Hi folks, in this lesson first we take a look at where you can find different Corona options and tools in Cinema 4D, basically a quick overview, then we'll learn about the overall workflow and working with Corona inside of C4D. We have a pretty basic scene here, a studio setup with a backdrop geometry and bunch of simple objects. The first thing would be to set Corona as our render engine. To do that, open up the render settings window and change the render to Corona. Now Corona is set as our render engine and we can start learning all about it. Next, let's see where can we find different Corona tools and functions inside Cinema 4D. In the render settings window, if you click on the Corona, you have access to Corona render settings. The general settings tab is where you can set render limits based on the number of passes, time, or noise level. Enable global illumination or indirect lighting, control some basic render overrides option. You can have your finished render denoised using the denoising section. In the camera tab resides camera related settings. Here you can control exposure, white balance, and vignetting of your camera. Add depth of field and motion blur or add effects like bloom and glare. Under scene environment tab you can set up environment textures and overrides. Performance tab lets you optimize and control the quality and sampling efficiency of your render. Frame buffer settings tab lets you access some of the basic Corona frame buffer options and control the image filtering method that you want to use. The secondary GI tab is only available if the secondary GI is set to UHD cache in the general settings tab, which is much simpler compared to V-Ray or Redshift, for example. From the Corona menu, you can add Corona sun and sky, Corona light and camera, different Corona objects like Corona proxy and hair. Using this multipass option, we can add different render passes for compositing, post-processing, and debugging purposes. You can open up Corona frame buffer or start the interactive rendering. You can convert Cinema 4D and V-Ray scenes to Corona scenes using this convert scenes option. You can also open up the node material editor and start building and developing complex Corona material networks. Here you have access to different Corona materials and maps like Corona material, which is the Uber material, hair and skin materials, and tons of specific Corona maps like ambient occlusion, triplanar, UVW randomizer, and so on. Corona also supports a lot of Cinema 4D native procedural maps, which is really helpful. Also in the Cinema 4D's material window, you can directly create different Corona materials. Now let's quickly light texture and render the scene to get a feel for Corona. Open up the node material editor, right click and add a new Corona material, which is the main Corona material basically, and select all the objects in the scene and apply the material to the selection. Now that a generic material is assigned, we can start adding lights. From the Corona menu, add a Corona light and change its size X and Y to 75 centimeters. So we have a bigger light source, therefore diffuser shadows. Rotate and position the light so it aims at our objects. Now before starting the render, we can add a Corona camera. We can do it right from the menu, or we can simply add a Corona camera tag to our existing camera in the scene. It's really the same. Also in the render setting, we can just change the resolution to 800 by 450. So we have a smaller render and we can have a faster feedback. Okay, let's start the render. From the Corona menu, select the interactive rendering, which starts an interactive rendering session in the Corona frame buffer. Now our scene is being rendered interactively in the Corona frame buffer. I can select my light and decrease or increase its intensity, change its color, and so on, and see the results interactively in the frame buffer. We can stop the interactive rendering for now. I want to add a secondary light to the other side of my scene. We can go to the top view and control and drag the light to create a duplicate and rotate it obviously towards the geometries. And run the interactive rendering again. You can set the intensity of the second light to about maybe 20 watts. I'm also going to change the color of the light to 5500 Kelvin degrees so we have a warmer light source. We can stop the interactive rendering for now and add a third light above our geometries. Just rotate it and move it on top a bit. We can decrease the intensity for this one to around maybe 10 watts, something in that neighborhood, and run the interactive rendering again. Now let's open up the Node material editor. And add a new Corona material. For the diffuse color, we can load this grid texture and assign the material to the backdrop geometry. Let's also go to the preview tab in the material and change the viewport preview size for this texture to 2048. Let's now create a chrome-like material for our alarm clock geometry. Create a new Corona material and rename it to Chrome. Assign it to the clock. We can set the diffuse color to block or just simply disable it and enable reflections. To get that chrome-like look, we need to increase our Fresnel IR to around 25 or even more. When I have a pure metal, you can obviously get a kind of more pure metal look by increasing the Fresnel IR even more, but 25 would be enough for now. And decrease the glossiness amount to 0.8 so we have a rougher surface. We can probably select the first light and adjust its intensity a tad so we don't get very overexposed and burnout areas in our render. Now let's wait a few minutes until we have a cleaner render. Now that the render is much cleaner, we can stop the render and save it right from the frame buffer to whatever format that we like. Okay, in this lesson we learned about where to find Corona tools and options in Cinema 4D and had a quick overview of the general workflow when working with Corona in Cinema 4D. In the next section of this course we start discussing lights and lighting in Corona. See you there.